Smart aesthetics, branding, marketing, entrepreneurship.
Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. We're talking AI today. It's everyone's favorite topic. It's my favorite topic to talk about because it's so exciting. But Claire Shu is here. Welcome, Claire.
Glad to be here.
Oh, I am so excited because I think I could spend hours and hours and hours looking at all your content on Instagram. All the tutorials, you share so much AI stuff for free that if anyone's not following you, they're really, truly missing out. But tell us a little bit about how you got to here. What's your background? How did you even get involved in AI and AI, generative AI? And give us the background a little bit so we can get to know you.
Totally. I would say consider myself a jack of all trades creative person. I've really did a little bit of everything. I've done photography, I've done prop styling, set designs, event styling, worked for retail and worked for a fashion tech startup and started my brand during pandemic 2020, Moodelier. Most of the people know my brand as this beautiful, colorful 3D object that serves as a home decor product, retail display, and photo props. So I have a lot of a large community of product photographers, stylists, and smaller e-com brands following my brand. But I would say 2020, towards the end of it, that's when generative AI, the term actually pops up. And then as the ADHD as I am, I'm really curious about new topics, and I'm also early adopter. So it got the ball rolling. I did a bunch of research, ChatGPT, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion. Quickly realized it's going to be very disruptive for the type of work I do, especially for Moodelier, is a platform providing essentially setting up the mood for all sorts of virtual and in-person scenery. Especially a lot of my followers or a lot of my customers are product photographer, and then realize a lot of the prop stylings is going to be very easily generated moving forward. Obviously, back then, the technology, the foundational model isn't good enough to actually use the images as the final deliverables. But I didn't really think that's going to be an issue because I know how quickly the new technology is shipping, and we see it's updated constantly. So I keep on digging. Fast forward 2023, last July, Midjourney released in painting, aka very rigid, and Photoshop integrated a Firefly model instead of Photoshop general field, and that become a little bit of a game changer for a lot of creatives and the designers because they already use a lot of Adobe's tool. So it's really easy for what I do, product images, AI-driven product images. The integration become accessible for everybody whoever has Adobe Suite. And from there, I really took it very seriously, start seriously implementing AI-driven method, and developed a camp called a Cash Camp, and launched it last November. So it's been over half a year since that camp started. I have trained a lot of the different creative people, some of the Sephora creative team from different departments, some leadership under LVMH group, and some just smaller agencies and e-com brands and some auction houses, which is really interesting. So things has changing so fast. I will say even my first camp and to the camp, I'm in the cohort 5 now. It's the content is constantly changing. I keep on adding new material, new resources, new way to implementing or integrating the product inside of a Photoshop. So it's really fun experience, a roller coaster kind of experience. So that's kind of why I got into generative AI, because it's really directly related to what I do.
Yeah, it's such an obvious use case. Like I think on my side, having worked with product-based brands, one of the biggest pains is photography, right? And having different types of photography. I'm always trying to tell them like there's a huge difference between studio versus straight e-com versus lifestyle photography. And so to alleviate that and start to fill in the blanks, similar to you, I was behind you a little bit, but by end of 2021, no, end of 2022, I would say, was like I was starting to figure out what first we were talking about metaverse. The funny thing is I can go back to the podcast episodes where I was like excited about these things and listen to like what I thought was so crazy is like now so normal. But we talked so much about like the virtual reality and augmented reality as being part of this. And what I think people are so afraid of right now is that they feel like they don't understand the technology when really like we've been living with this technology for a while. Like if we think of Snapchat filters, right? Those are kind of augmented reality filters. Like these are things that people don't realize, like even like large language models like Siri is kind of into that realm. I feel like there's a lot of discourse online right now about people feeling really uncomfortable by AI. What are your opinions about it? Do you listen to it or do you just kind of say like, okay, well, it's working for me, so whatever to everybody else? What's your personal feeling about the conversations that are happening?
Yeah, I think right now there's a two-sided conversation I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing. One is the tech bro, yeah, let's, the tech builder, let's go. Like, we don't care about the privacy. We don't care people's data. We
Mm-hmm.
don't care about where we're sourcing the image and content from. Let's just build. And then we're here, people who doesn't really understand the technology, like, no, that's crap. You're stealing artists' work and we're not for it. And you shouldn't use it. I myself is more in the neutral
Mm-hmm.
ground because coming from as a creative person, used to have worked with a lot of other creators, so I understand the perspective of why people the criticism. I am all for it. On the training side, I do feel like there is a bit of a gray area where all
Mm-hmm.
these images from artists is being trained without their permissions and then using it directly compete with their income
Sure.
sources. So in that side, I do feel there is unjust happening. And that's why at the beginning of it, I was really one of the people who are kind of scared. Like, what does this mean? Like, is this
Mm-hmm.
going to completely changing the industry, how we work? But then as I dig deeper, as I learn more, as I understand the technology a little bit better, and I realize it is really just another tool for us to
Yes.
play around with it. It's still the images you'll see I create, and now I'm exploring AI-driven videos. So all these is still a creative process. It's still creative problem solving. If you actually see how the way I create or some other creator who are adopting AI tools, it is using the tools to integrate it into their existing creative workflow.
Sure.
So think it's still a process, but it's not the same. You're using different tools or you're using the same tools like Adobe, who is just adding all these new AI features. Obviously, there is a little bit of a learning curve. It's not a magic wand, like as much as we wanted to compare AI as the magic. It doesn't just wave the wand or one click button and fix everything. There is a lot of nuanced things you
Mm-hmm.
have to still fix, edit it. You still have to have the domain expertise in order to generating or crafting these images or videos. You can't be just like marketing salesperson used to work in the sales team. Now, like talking about, I use AI to do branding, packaging design, and the product photography. And here is my images. It's going to be crap. And we still
Mm-hmm.
need the
Mm-hmm.
people, the creative people who used to work in the exactly industry that you are now using AI for assistance. It still takes a creative expert for exactly specific domain you used to work at or in. Then adopt AI tools. Just for example, I am not a packaging designer. So I would not go all of a sudden say, hey, this is teaching people, this is how I use AI to design packaging. Unless I did a bit of a study about packaging
Mm-hmm.
design, unless
Mm-hmm.
I learned, and then I can go about teaching
Apply
how
it.
to use. Exactly. So that's the point that people think that all of a sudden everybody can come to AI tools just to create whatever they want. It doesn't work like that way. They're still gonna create work that's not going to be deliverable for clients, or it doesn't work in reality. So I would say I approach AI as a tool. I try to use it. I adopt it but I use it cautiously. I use with responsibility because it's a very powerful tool. With great power, it comes even greater
Great
responsibility.
responsibility.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
in this case, so I'm more neutral. I'm cautious about the problem comes with it, ethical issues, but I'm big advocate that designers, creatives really should try it out and adopt these tools because that's just gonna be our day-to-day life moving forward. You
Of
can't
course.
escape it.
Of
It's kind of
course.
naive. Yeah, it's kind of naive to think that you can avoid it.
And it's so interesting because I feel like we're at the point of a revolution, right? Just like we had an industrial revolution, just like we had a different industry, like through all of human history. I just think of we're at this point now where saying that you don't want to use AI in anything ever is like owning a horse and buggy and saying, I'm not going to drive a car. I'm not interested in cars. I don't want a car. I don't want to drive a car. I don't want anyone to drive a car. And it's like, well, the car's here. So either you're going to use it and learn it and participate or don't. And that if you don't want to, that's also fine. But like if you're
Yeah.
there's kind of this resistance, and I think it's also really interesting because I think of like the students that are going through school now that are learning graphic arts or that are learning, they're learning how to write essays and they're using ChatGPT. Like I'm not necessarily against it because I'd rather them not be writing 40-page essays and instead be taking classes on media literacy and like how to figure out if something is written by AI or not. Like go learn how to actually find the sources to things because you cannot take what the computer spits out at point blank as being perfect. And we see this with AI image generation all the time, right? Like you can start to tell like, oh, this foot is on backwards or this face is looking kind of funky. Like if you have a trained eye, you can find it. And if you don't, you can skip over it. What are some of the funnier things that you've seen come out of AI where you're like, well, that didn't turn out at all like what I wanted it to? Because I know you've shared some on YouTube.
Totally. Yeah, but I think the most obvious one everybody's the human eye can recognize, like the foot backwards, the hand is backwards, the fingers and the face issues. All those are like very easy, noticeable things that it doesn't take a trained eye. But what I'm actually really interested in is some of the more subtle, nuanced error that AI still makes, but it doesn't, at the first glance, people don't realize. But then once you zoom in and see the reflections and the hand's reflection is not supposed to be in the same certain way. And then I actually have to develop this skill to really spot on some of these subtle error that AI makes in order to like actually differentiate if this is AI generated or if this is photograph, because the technology now is so good. It's harder and harder for human eye to differentiate. And some of the Sora models and there's the new Chinese AI video models came out recently, and there's a mid-aged man eating noodles. At the first glance, I feel like I'm very trained for what is AI not, but I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, no way, this is just a footage. But as I was looking through maybe like the 20th time, I noticed the finger in the corner there is a sudden change, so that it couldn't be a real footage. But then the chopsticks, as when he is eating the noodle, the way it twists and turns, it kind of warps out of nowhere. But those things are super subtle that it doesn't, you don't really see it at first. So I feel like that is a new skill set that we were not used to have, because everything's real footage. Nobody's gonna like zoom in and see the shadows and the reflection if it's correct or accurate.
Right. I think it's also follows the kind of trend of art history. So I have an art history degree. So this is where I finally feel like my art history degree is playing into my actual job because I can call back to the height of high art, of fine arts, was hyperrealism, right? So like to see the Dutch masters paint a tablescape of like a super accurate apple that's like perfect and like the droplets of water, like that was what a lot of people conceive of as like high art, right? Or like Chuck Close, the artist who did in pencil and charcoal, like the image of himself that looks like a black and white photograph, but it's drawn, right? Rendered. Basically, the argument to be made there is that maybe you're not really saying a lot with hyperrealism. So there's also this margin of, does AI have to be perfect to still communicate the image. Whereas I think a lot of people are looking to generative AI and AI images is like, oh, you're going to give me a photorealism scene so that I don't have to go shoot photography. But what I think they miss is the opportunity to make something that is like fantastical and wonderful
Mm-hmm.
and like not possible through photography. Like there's this whole
Totally.
margin to really play. And I think you do
Totally.
that really well with some of your product photography, generative AI, like especially in like
Mm,
beverage space stuff.
mm,
But it does take process, like you were talking about, right? Like you still have to
mm-hmm.
have the idea so that by the time you're prompting it, it's outputting something that's consistent with what you're seeing in your head. Is that how it's working for you mostly?
Yes, but the process, I'm even talking about the process of how to get from a generated background image to matching with my product. The light means how do I actually shoot the product to match with the background? How do I get very realistic the humans? That's a whole like long process instead of like just I have to think what text prompt. The text prompt is
Sure.
like the first step.
Yep.
It's not easy to get to a great initial image in Midjourney, but that's only the beginning of my whole process. I
Mm-hmm.
started with in Midjourney and then I go Photoshop, pre-Photoshop a little bit and use image enhancement tools and then I go back to Photoshop and then I shoot a product and then I go back to Photoshop. There is a long process for me to end it up the image you see online looks okay, but that's not very, that takes a long
Accurate. Yeah.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Takes a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah, we have kind of the same thing in our process because we're using a lot of generative AI in the mood boarding process to show imagery that the clients may not have access to, and also to not have to rely so much on stock photography websites because
Mm-hmm.
they're overused. And we've seen the same picture of like a coffee cup on a counter for 10 years now. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
starting to show especially our clients that have like more of a historical like background to them to be able to generate out images that literally could not have existed otherwise. So for example, we have this project called Salt Dog. It is an indoor pool, saltwater pool for dogs and like a
Mm,
rehabilitation center for dogs. And they're in Vermont. And I wanted to really push them towards this very old school boardwalk, like bathing costumes, like stripes and the
mm,
houses and things like that. So using AI to show us like dogs with swim caps and swim flippers and things like that. Like, how can we do the things that would be a huge production otherwise? But using it in the beginning phase of the project has been really helpful for us because then we can
mm-hmm,
show the client the idea when otherwise, when I was first describing it to them, they were like, maybe, like, I don't know, I'd have to see it. And then to be able to come
mm,
back like a week later and say, they're just the first draft of these images, but what if we did something like this? Is really cool
mm.
to kind of as a brainstorm tool. Do you find yourself using Midjourney as like a brainstorm tool?
I do not as much because I
Yeah,
don't work with a lot of clients. So
sure.
most of the use cases I am trying to demonstrate or educating people is how do we use AI for the final deliveries? Because I
Mm-hmm.
already know like the initial concept.
You're in
Obviously,
it.
that's it's easy. That's the most obvious way to use AI. But how can we actively using the initial concept images for your final delivery as access
Sure.
creative assets. So that's what I'm trying to really nail it. But I know a lot of creative directors use it as conceptual
Mm-hmm.
phase for the tools. I think that's a fantastic way to communicate visually with your clients. But now what I feel like it's interesting is now your clients say, oh, I actually like this image. Then you can actively use that same conceptual image for your final deliveries if you know how to
Mm-hmm.
navigate the tools and if you have a workflow to make that happen for your client.
Mm-hmm. That definitely is what's gotten me the most excited. And Lauren, being able to talk to Lauren for Bemuse Studio, who if you guys are regular on the podcast, you know we've interviewed her already 3 times, is all of the different ways in which you can like take that and use it. Even like things like the expand tools, right? Like having your image to be able to vertical crop or horizontal crop based on where you need it is so useful. I mean, you're even showing on your Instagram here, like I love the clip that you did of you sitting out on the balcony and it had no furniture. And then you're like populating all of the furniture and the decor of visualizing all of that. How much, just out of pure curiosity, how much of your process do you dedicate to just playing? with these tools, because I think a lot of good discoveries get made when you can just play, when they're like not tied to a client project or not tied to a specific deliverable. I'm curious if that's like you schedule time to just play with these things.
No, I always have something in mind, and I do play, but very little time to actually play with the tools because I perform the best when there is not client, there is a project in mind that
Sure.
I'm actively kind of trying to reach exactly the thing I wanted. Because in my head, with AI, it's so limitless. You can really go wild. And obviously, playing is really, really fun. But I'm almost more interested than to get to very specific things. Because in reality, as a creative working with clients, there is a creative brief you have to stick with. There's a color palette. There's a specific thing you have to do instead of going completely wild. Although you can go for the very surreal looking images, which is more like CGI, very otherworldly. Those are more, you have more room to actually get kind of crazy with it. But a lot of the time, I feel most of the brands and the clients probably wouldn't want it to stick with their existing branding. And that's where it gets hard because most of the people don't know how to control and direct the AI tools to create those consistent images that's gonna stick with the brief. So that's what I wanted to do or achieve. So I do play a little bit, but most of the time I feel like I stick with what I needed to do in my head.
Execute. Yeah. You mentioned AI video. I've played around a little bit with Runway, which has been fun, but you're right. You can start to see it fall apart a little bit. You mentioned a Chinese, like AI video app. Do you think that you would ever see yourself get to the point where you're helping, because you are helping on the final deliverable side, and you're helping create like full video productions via AI video?
Yeah, we're definitely getting there, but it's still pretty limited. Think about a video. Video is at least 24 frame of a still image to make a video. So if we can now really arrive to a level that the still image is perfect, it's gonna be really hard to do that with video. So I have recently just started playing with AI driven videos where I still combine some of the traditional footage with AI generated assets. Because that's something I'm really interested. How do we merge both the traditional and the AI? It's challenging. It's not the easiest way to do it, but considering there isn't really much of a production, so it's still, even though the results are limited, but there are some stuff you can definitely use AI for video productions, but not at the point of like the whole video can be generated or a whole movie can be generated with no traditional editing or any sort of a traditional way to film a movie. It's still going to be like a little bit of a combination of things if you want to do it right. Because even with Sora or even with the Chinese AI models, it's still going to be quite limited. Just think product campaigns or ads when you involve a actual physical product that cannot be hallucinated, cannot change anything on the product. That's still going to be really, really challenging, like the product photography or the product image, AI driven product image I do. It's still challenging right now. So imagine that challenge maximized with video. So I guess long story short is, yes, we're definitely heading to that direction. But as far as commercial, if you involve with any product, it is going to be a still combination of original footage or 3D assets, like 3D model rendering type of thing, plus traditional editing and filmmaking. It's not going to be text to video and boom, that's it. It's not going to be like that.
That's what I have to keep reminding people is like these tracks can grow at the same time. So as more things become AI and more things become digital, like I think also film is going to pick up and in-person experience is going to pick up. Like just because things are going one way doesn't mean that the other part also goes away. So I think that there's an interesting blend that's happening, right? And so like I'm looking now at your Instagram of like some of the images you've done with Kin, where you've got this very like 70s theme and kind of funky vibe. Like maybe that image that, yes, it started as AI spurs a whole other idea for like an actual in-person experience that has that same look and feel. Like you're creating worlds, like you're creating immersive branding experiences that aren't limited by like budget constraints as much, or access or styling, or like where are you going to find like a yellow tubed glass side table in your area that you can shoot with, right? So I think that potential is really interesting. How do you think AI and generative AI, learning it or integrating it, is going to help people connect more in person? Do you think that there's a link at all, or do you feel like those are two totally separate categories?
Are you saying is your question about how can we use the AI or generative AI to bring people together, bring the relationship closer?
I think so, yeah. Or do you think that this is because, okay, so I'll tell you kind of the feedback that I've gotten before is when I've posted on AI before is I said, if you're given the opportunity, if something used to take me 8 hours and now it only takes me 45 minutes, I want to do it in 45 minutes. Like that's just who I am, right? But then the response I've gotten back to that is, well, the problem is now companies and employers and people and clients are going to demand not only that you get it done in 45 minutes, but they're going to give you 10 more things to do. It's like what we gain in productivity is not actually a gain because it's a loss of freedom in a way. Like this used to take me longer and therefore it was better. I just don't personally subscribe to that as an entrepreneur because I'm always on the hunt to like, how can I deliver the best quality product in the most reasonable amount of time?
Right.
But I'm curious what your thoughts are with that, because my answer to it was, well, if we can create better, high quality brands faster, it helps our clients succeed faster, which helps them do what they ultimately want to do, which is bring people together. That's been my pitch. What do you think of that?
I think that's really interesting. I think to answer sort of like a part of your question, I don't think it's AI's issue. It's just technology. When we are able to using technology to kind of increase the productivity, think about plane, right? We used to have to take a boat or train or a car to get to 1 to B for X amount of time. And then all of a sudden you have a plane and that's 1 hour. So that means you're saving the traveling time for something else, like either more work or more time with your friends, that's up to you. Like the time you're saving up, that's up to you. And then, yes, that in the business, that means instead of 10 photos, now maybe you can create like 100 photos within the same amount of time. And then that will be just more volumes, higher quality, or that's debatable because some people using AI to do shitty quality stuff.
Sure.
So I just think overall the AI is going to bring the quality or volume, the bar a lot higher than what we used to do, because used to creating everything more manually. Now it's more automated. But then that's not necessarily like an AI thing. It's just how the technology works. And then in terms of how do we bring people closer with the technology, and I think that may be up to that individual or that brands. Either they wanted to save up that time that AI helps you to be more creative, and then maybe give your employee a little bit more time to not do work so they can be refreshed when they come back to work more ready. Or that means you just use that time for something you really enjoy. Go out to take a walk, enjoy a movie, and do something that's not in front of a computer. I would say that can certainly bring people together. Just do something that's what we used to do with our friends when we're young.
I know, right? If you're a young person now, so let's say like tomorrow you're turning 18 and you're about to enter the workforce, or maybe you're go to college or not go to college, but you're starting to figure out about yourself that you're a young person that wants to get into a creative field. What would you tell somebody who's like 18, 19 years old now about, gosh, in 2024, I would focus on this? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I totally agree that because once you graduate from school and the workforce is now everybody, when employee hires you, you needed to have all the AI skills because that's what we are using in the real world. So you have to be able to know how to utilize these tools. I do think some teachers are already kind of teaching their students this mindset, but I also think this is very critical for you, that individual person, is to start shifting your mindset to instead of thinking moving forward, like what is the skill set I need. Maybe think about how do I problem solving? Like what is the subject matter? Become the subject matter expert instead of become like a master Photoshop user, or become like one thing that is requires to years of skills, years of practice to honing in that skill. But now because with AI, we don't necessarily need to be a master of Photoshop. You can know how to use generative field and to get a shortcut. So develop sort of a creative problems thinking skills rather than one particular or a couple particular tool, because with the help of AI, it's just going to get easier and easier to use these tools. I'm sure later this year or next year, we'll be able to use a lot of just our voice to command some of these assistants instead of typing everything. So I would say develop a great creative problem solving skills instead of trying to learn one particular tool and just master on that one or two tools.
Do you think that being a good creative communicator is important? Because I think a lot about how my journey with AI was much easier because I could fall back on like my art history knowledge. So I could say like, I want 1970s mod, or I want 1920s art deco, or I want, medieval style. Like I already had that backlog of visual knowledge. Do you think that like, and communicating, understanding history helps you moving forward?
That definitely helps you. But like I mentioned, because with AI, learning is going to be very simple now. I am not necessarily the expert of history of art, but what if I just use the AI to read through this whole book and I just chat with it to get the exactly same thing out of it, but with like 30 minutes. But obviously you need to verify if this is actually correct and accurate. So you do need a little bit of a knowledge to understand, the background, the context. But I also feel like it's just going to even change how we educate ourselves. I think it's going to be a lot faster because now you can show AI a visual, upload it into ChatGPT and ask all these detailed questions. Who created this art? What genre it is? What is this particular drawing technique called? Who are some of the comparable artists with this? I don't necessarily know all of these remember in my brain, but if you know how AI works, you can get it out really quickly.
And if you know how to use it as a tool, like you're talking about, right? Because I remember studying those. I used to have to print out the picture of the artwork on one side of a flashcard and then write all the facts on the back of the flashcard. So like the fact that we have this and it's so easy. Oh, yes. I love using ChatGPT in that way of asking it questions. I'll have ChatGPT check my work. I'll upload a logo design and say, what qualities do you think that this logo design is speaking to? And I'm trying to see if it's going to give me the answer that I have, like we're playing Jeopardy, where it's like, cool, what is modern, fun, and funky? Like that's kind of what I'm asking for from ChatGPT. So I think it is that good partner of kind of working with it, using it as a tool, as a co-pilot, like Lauren always says. I love that you brought up that voice commanding. I would love to not have to type anymore personally. I think that would be so good. What other advancements, because you're so plugged into this world, what technological advancements do you kind of forecast coming through in the AI space that maybe people haven't heard of yet or haven't thought about yet?
Think about we're eventually heading to that AGI moment, right? So from now to AGI, everything all these tech companies do is trying to achieve the AGI that benefits the humanity. So in order to do that, and the AI, next phase of AI, needs to understand the real world physics. They need to be able to see the real world, but then predict what it is going to likely happen next based on what it sees in front of you. So for example, if you see as human, you see a cat on the table and there is a jar next to the cat, and the cat paw is leaning on the jar. And as a human, we can predict that this jar is going to fall and you will likely act to save that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So currently AI is not capable of predicting something in the 3D moment, or for the 3D object. But that's what a lot of researcher and a lot of tech company is working on to achieve in the future, to predict something that's in real world in the 3D space, to help to achieve AGI. But currently, I'm sure most of your listeners already heard of AI wearables. So a lot of these AI wearables, they call it ambient computing, where in the near future, there's a lot of privacy and data issue, security issue comes with these wearables, because it constantly is recording you. So I don't want to go too much in that parts, but with these type of hardware wearables, we're going to start collecting a lot of our own data. And it's going to be very easily to train either what they call it a digital twin of yourself, or an extension of yourself, where it's just this big AI assistant or agents just know a lot of context about you. So the next time when you, for example, we just had this podcast, and if my wearables recording, and next time there's a new technology came out, and I think it's directly related to your field, and I would tell my agent and say something like, hey, can you please send this piece of news that how I think this can be beneficial for Michelle, and then it will be automatically send it to you instead of me typing everything. So a lot of these stuff we'll see playing out, and maybe eventually we're already seeing Bumble start to doing this, like dating with both AI avatars. So without you actually going through hundreds of profile, your AI avatar is vetting it, talking to somebody else's AI avatar.
Oh,
so
I didn't know about this.
Yeah,
this is new.
Yeah,
okay.
So your AI twins will start, connecting and chatting and helping you to filter out some of these initial small talks and conversations. Even with clients in the future, I can see you have your AI twins or agents to chat with clients initially, just to figure out if this is a good fit for you, instead of for you to waste maybe 20, 30 minutes of your time. To do that.
Super exciting. Super exciting. I'm excited for the educational opportunities. Also, I did the Vision Pro demo at the Apple Store. And the first use case that came to mind is I want to be able to put on the headset and go attend a lecture at Harvard. You know what I mean? To go and feel like I could go sit in the actual lecture hall and see all the other people there and see the professor and see the things, but then not have to leave from my house. So I was thinking about how that's going to either democratize education or make it so only accessible to a certain echelon, which always happens with technology, right? When the iPhone came out, only a few people had the iPhone, and now everybody has iPhone. So I think it's going to take a while, obviously, for people to adjust to all the new modalities. But I love that idea of having your AI twin kind of stepping in to help the automated, the regular task, the recurring task. Because as a business owner, everyone has those things going on. So interesting. Sure. My goodness. I have to ask you, where are your sources? Who do you love to follow, or newsletters you subscribe to, or anything like that, to kind of stay up to date on all the AI news and happenings?
So I think for my area of stuff, it's so hard to just, I don't have any one newsletter that I subscribe to for that. I will say because of recommendations, right? So once you follow a few of these people, then if you're constantly on social, which is not necessarily the healthiest thing, I'm not promoting it. But the point is, once you show the algorithm your interest is in this, it's starting gonna promote similar content for you. So honestly, just being on social and having a good friend circle of a community like you and me, and then maybe next time I think about something and I will send it to you, and vice versa. So I start developing all these friends, and they know this is what I'm interested, this is my niche, and they just start sending me stuff. And also when you are constantly posting on social, people are commenting under your comments. I have somebody who just commented on my LinkedIn with a new tool that's potentially going to benefit for my AI-driven videos. I wasn't aware of. That's because I was posting. By the way, LinkedIn is such a good platform for AI and design.
Really?
I just so much better on compared to Instagram, at least for me, because my audience is mostly so fearful for AI product photos. So I don't have a very super, I just feel like because it's kind of there's still a lot of a fear. So I just don't think my audience in Instagram is super engaged. But my God, LinkedIn is so good.
Okay.
I have such little followers, but it's
good engagement. Okay.
Really good engagement.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're convincing me for LinkedIn. It's something that it's one of those platforms that I haven't really put a bunch of time or effort into because I like to look at things that are pretty, like that. It feels good for my brain. And the user interface of LinkedIn has always turned me off. That's really what it is. There's not really a good excuse. It's other than just like, it just looks so corporate. And I think being like a freelancer for the last 10 years and like being drawn to Instagram, drawn to TikTok really naturally. But I'm definitely like willing to give it a try because I think that people on LinkedIn also, there is more of that technology optimist. They're ready. There's also people with corporate backgrounds and corporate budget that are ready to like, okay, let's start doing this faster, better.
No, you don't have to do anything different. I just post exactly the same thing as I post on Instagram, but LinkedIn just gave me such a better reward. And then my followers are very sustainably increasing, never going backwards. On Instagram, I gained 3, I lost 5. So
wild.
Yeah.
Wild. Okay, the last thing, just out of curiosity, if you have time, is my question. People are putting on their stories like, I do not give Instagram permission to train on my AI tool.
Yes.
Every time I see it, I'm like, okay, like what? Like, and my first argument to that is like, what people don't realize is people steal from each other all the time. So like the AI stealing your art, like, yes, does feel unethical, but artists by nature are constantly mishmashing ideas and not giving credit for where they got their ideas from. So like, and maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but what do you think that people really toggling off their AI training capabilities on Instagram is going to change the needle?
No, I think at this point, it's the damage is already done, and all the image model is really, really good. So I don't think it matters as much whether or not Meta is going to train some of their model. Well, Meta is doing that because I guess Meta's image model is behind. That's why they're trying desperately to get more data through the users. But there's two thoughts. One thought, I think on Meta said they should have gave US user the opt-out options, which they're not currently giving that. They're only giving the US, the UK users opt-out options. That's because they have to comply if they want to have their technology in Europe. They have to comply with Europe's law, which is much stricter for data privacy for this stuff. But I do think Meta could have gave the US the same, or other countries the same equivalent opt-out options, which they're not doing it. That is kind of a bummer and not really nice on the Meta side. So that's one thought. I think Meta could have gave the opt-out options, but I understand as a business they need the data. Which that's not excusing their behaviors. But then even they say they gave opt-out option for Europe and UK users, but who's to saying that they're not training it? Like, we don't know, right?
Yeah.
We can't, as user, we can't fact check.
We can authenticate. Yeah, we can authenticate that's actually
we can.
Yeah.
And even with Adobe, it's doing the same thing now.
Totally.
Everything you using Adobe Creative Cloud, and then there's now they don't even. I think recently they said, don't call me 100%, but I think recently Adobe came out said that as long as you're using our tools, we're going to use your data to train our models.
Welcome to 2024. That's kind of also what I have to say. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of the things of like, I think one of the big businesses that's going to pop up soon is going to be like data insurance and data protection, right? Because like, but also, I don't know, as a creative, like there's such a huge volume of content that's being created at the speed of light that I'm like, do I really care if they want to train on my picture of an Aperol Spritz? Like, go for it. I don't know. You know, it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I think a lot of damage has been done, but in other ways, there's been a lot more freedom, a lot more like democracy, a lot more opportunity for people that don't have access to all the tools to be able to create something that looks really visually interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a double-edged sword. There is pros and cons, and how do we, as a creatives, it's all about balancing both sides. How can we leveraging the technology, but also use it with respect for others. There's certain things, practices we should follow through instead of just always try to do the shortcuts, upload somebody's image using other artist's name and all these things to create your work and content.
Well, where can everyone find you, follow you? You've got so much great content to share on your socials, and I'm going to have to find you on LinkedIn after this. So let us know where we can connect with you and learn more about generative AI.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram by Claire Xue. Claire with E and XUE, no space. So that's my Instagram. And my LinkedIn is the same, Claire Xue. I'm pretty active on both platforms, and I have a newsletter that's free and weekly. I also share a lot of sort of a behind the scene and my process on my weekly newsletter. And
Cool.
that's on my LinkedIn bio, both LinkedIn and Instagram.
Yay. Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you back again on the podcast and maybe a few months from now, and we can say all the new things that are happening with AI, because that's how quickly it feels like it moves. So if you enjoyed today's episode, guys, please screenshot it, share it, tag us. We'd love to see it. Let us know your thoughts, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.